Good evening, everyone. Do I have any public comments from the board?
Just have one comment, in case anybody was not aware that Kinder Morgan / Tennessee Valley Gas has indefinitely suspended their bid for the pipeline that has been proposed, the Northeast Direct pipeline. And that is excellent. Well, I believe it's excellent news, and everybody I saw at least 4 meetings that I went to, public hearings, think that's good news. So I want to thank everybody who participated, all of people from Lunenburg and all the neighboring towns and all the people along the route who made it very clear that they did not want this, and for whatever reasons they are publicly stating, I don't really care. I'm just glad that it's not going in. So in case anybody was not aware, that is now officially, I guess it's not dead, it's in stasis or something, but it looks like it is not going to happen. So thank everybody for their participation.
Congratulations to all of us on that. I wanted to mention that this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. And we'd like to thank all the teachers in Lunenburg for all the work they do with our children. When Lunenburg counts its blessing, we count our teachers twice. Hazardous waste disposal at Devon's at 9 Cook Street is the first Wednesday and Saturday of each month. They take fluorescent bulbs as well as many other hazardous waste products. Our town pays for our participation, and we hope more Lunenburg residents will take advantage of this service, which aims to keep hazardous waste out of landfills.
I have several announcements from the town clerk's office. The annual town election takes place on May 21st. The polls open at the TC Passios building at 1025 Mass Ave at 7 a.m. and close at 5 p.m. May 19th is the last day and hour to vote an absentee ballot at the town clerk's office. So it's May 19th at 12 noon is the last day and hour to vote by absentee ballot in the annual town election. The town census, if you've not returned your 2016 census or returned a phone call from the town clerk's office, please do so as soon as possible. Anyone not doing so will be put on an inactive voting list by the state, and at any future elections you'll be required to get out of the line and fill out paperwork before being allowed to vote. With a big election coming up, an updated census will make less work for everyone. Finally, 2016 dog licenses. The renewal of dog licenses was due on or before March 31st, 2016. If you have not updated your dog's license, please do so by Wednesday, May 11th, after which delinquent accounts will be referred to the police department for further processing. Town clerk's office hours are Monday from 8 to 4, Tuesday from 8 to 1, and then from 3 to 6, Wednesday from 8 to 4, and Thursday from 8 to 1, and then 3 to 6. I also like to continue mentioning our vacancies on the various committees in town. We have vacancies on the Finance Committee, the Sewer Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Board of Health is listed here. That's an elected position. The Public Access Cable Committee, the Cable Advisory Committee, the Stormwater Task Force, the Personnel Committee, and the Memorial Day Committee. Anyone interested in serving on any of those committees can fill out a talent bank form, which is available at Town Hall, but also on the website, and submit it to the Board of Selectmen's office. Also, there were some vacancies on elected positions that you'll notice at the election on the 21st, and I guess they're available for write-in vote or would become appointed positions if no one is elected to those positions. Do you have any public comment from the public? Okay. Our 7 o'clock appointment is a request to relocate the gate at 171 Lancaster Avenue and discuss drainage correction. We have someone here to speak to that.
I don't think so.
Okay, why don't we move on to some other items, and if the requester does come in, we'll see if we can fit that in. The next appointment is for 7:15, so I'll take up some other items while we wait for 7:15. Let me see what we have here. Well, we have minutes. We have minutes for 4/5, 4/12, and 4/19.
I really appreciate that those minutes are taken care of so expeditiously.
Yeah, might as well do warrants as well. I have a payroll warrant for $941.49. Another payroll warrant for $654,206.33. Payroll deduction in the amount of $439,549. And accounts payable in the amount of $2,121,180.95. Let's see. All the rest of these have to do with warrant articles, and I would prefer to keep them in the order that we have them on the agenda. How about we move to, is there any action file issues? Okay, maybe we do committee reports till 7:15. Any updates on committee reports from the board?
Which way do you want to go, this way, or Phyllis, you're going to go first?
Sure. Okay. The school committee met on April 27th. John Londa reported on work to be considered at the school buildings and on the school property this summer. The disposal of the Passios trailer will go out to bid. They got a quote from Powell, which was kind of high, so they decided they needed to go out to bid. Turkey Hill may have $30,000 worth of ceiling and fascia work. The primary school entrance may be painted. The Turkey Hill School Industrial Arts Room had been divided in half by Monty Tech students. Half is now a computer lab. The other half will be transformed into a heated maintenance garage for a cost of about $30,000. It's going out to bid. That maintenance garage will be very close to the maintenance garage that was part of the school building contingency and will be built for what, about $180,000? Is that right, Tom?
The maintenance garage? Yeah, about 180, yes.
So they'll have a heated maintenance garage and an unheated maintenance garage. They'll meet again tomorrow night. The Stormwater Task Force met on Thursday, April 28th. Jim Augie let us know that for personal reasons, he'll not be able to continue to serve on the task force. He's informed the Board of Health Chair, who will designate a replacement. Adam and I attended an informative workshop in Salem entitled Creating a Revenue Stream for Stormwater Management. Sarah Kammer is continuing to work on our 319 grant application. We're finalizing plans for a volunteer cleanup of a designated area on May 14th. More details will follow. It was announced that Massachusetts is going to join 46 other states and apply to take over enforcement of the MS4 permit from the EPA. We'll follow this closely. That is good news for us. Our next meeting is May 12th.
Do you want to keep going?
Sure.
Okay. The Conservation Commission met on April 20th. It was an extremely long meeting. So I'm just going to hit the highlights. 101 Pleasant Street, which is the area that had received an enforcement order adjacent to the town property. The wetlands have been flagged, the excavated area that was the big hole that we had witnessed has been filled in. The Conservation Commission has walked to verify that. They discussed not removing the culvert through the roadway, but instead to properly size it and consider it temporary in nature while the forest cutting plan is in effect. The engineer did indicate that they are willing to address the violations on town property, so I don't know what the status is of that with the town manager and communication, but the engineer did indicate that they are willing to do that. They need to complete remediation on 101 Pleasant Street prior to other work on the property, and they are going to be presenting a remediation plan at the next meeting, and the Conservation Commission did a site walk this past Saturday on the property. Lake Shirley presented a lake management plan that was reviewed by the commission, which basically requests permission to continue with drawdown and chemical herbicide applications. The Conservation Commission, some of the members indicated they were looking for more data, and the item was continued to May 4th, and they actually had a workshop on this item on last Wednesday on the 27th. The Stone Farm development, they reviewed a punch list of items that need to be addressed, and they'll be sending a letter to the property owner. Some of the items are catch basins that need to be cleaned, detention basins that need maintenance, as-built on the project, and a number of other items. A couple of other properties that I don't need to go into. They did talk about street sweeping, and there was a discussion of the Conservation Commission's role in that activity, because street sweeping is related to stormwater and wetlands, and so there was a talk about trying to implement some sort of auditing program. So I don't know exactly, it was just a brief comment. The Cowdrey lot, which is one of the largest conservation properties in town, has a number of areas that are being flooded and damaged by beaver activity. There's actually been some bridge damage that was done, so the Conservation Commission is looking into remediating that damage. One of the participants, one of the members of the public that was there asked if the Conservation Commission is willing to be televised, and they indicated that they have agreed to be televised at their second meeting of the month, which is the third Wednesday and starting in June. So it will be here and it will be televised. The Planning Board, I was not able to attend that meeting, which was April 25th. However, I did have an opportunity to view it, and there was a lot of discussion, mainly on the bylaws, but in addition, they approved a drive-up grocery plan pickup area for 301 Mass Ave, which is the Hannaford, with some conditions for turnaround radius. But there was a lot of discussion on the bylaws, and they did talk about the concerns that this board raised, and they are planning to remove the parking restriction from the front of property other than on designated paving areas, and they talked about exempting single-family homes from the paving requirement, except for the first 12 feet of the driveway. And finally, the MPO meeting, which I'll be brief because I see that the engineer from VHP is here. The MPO meeting, we talked about the Summer Street project, as you're aware, and the projected cost of the project exceeds the $6.9 million cost that was originally projected, and the engineer estimate is now at $10 million, and with the revisions and escalation factor that DOT uses, the cost could be as much as $13 million, which exceeds the target funds for the entire region. So additionally, due to the complexity of the project, it's anticipated that it will take at least 2 to 3 construction at least 2, possibly 3 seasons to complete the project. So it could be considered what's called an advanced construction project, allowing it to be funded over multiple years. And so the MPO agreed to look at this project as an AC and requested that the additional scenarios for the TIP be developed. The scenarios that were presented didn't consider funding it over multiple years. Federal Highway urged us to supply a projected timeline that includes the construction schedule so that it could be granted AC status. He really stressed that it can't just be because it exceeds the target funds. There has to be a legitimate construction reason associated with the AC status. And Trish Domigan was present and did a great job explaining that it's a very complex project which will require extensive drainage and sidewalks on either side. So Arthur Frost of DOT didn't see an issue with getting AC status. And one of the main concerns from Mass DOT is the town needs to continue to make progress on the easement acquisition, which is an article that's on the Maytown meeting. The other Lunenburg project that was discussed was the Chase Road project, which continues to advance, and it's at the 75% design phase, and may be eligible for safety funding, which would be good news for us, which would make it easier to plug into the tip. So that's being reviewed. So depending on the final funding scenario that's voted next month, which is May 25th, the Chase Road project could be programmed into one of those years, depending on the safety rating and funds available.
That AC status decision, does that, if we get the AC status, does that improve our?
Yes, yes, it does. Because the project as it stands right now consumes essentially all of the target funds for the region. By doing it over a span, it allows other projects in other communities to be programmed in, realistically, it's probably the most financially responsible plan, because this will not be completed in one construction season. So therefore, funding it over multiple years will make it easier to program and easier to fund. So I think that would be a good thing.
Great. Okay. Do you have monthly updates? Do you want to just finish the updates?
I have no updates, so mine is easy.
And the only update I have from the Sewer Commission, as we talked about their updated grease trap regulations, they had their second hearing televised, and they did vote to adopt the revised regulations.
Okay, fine. And there's no update for capital planning or building reuse. They'll both be discussed at annual town meeting. Alrighty, so our 7:15 appointment is with Rory Wedenen, who's here to discuss Article 44, the yard waste curbside pickup. Welcome back.
Thank you. On April 12th, I stood before you all to introduce the proposal that I have for the town's consideration in providing curbside yard waste pickup services for the residents here in Lunenburg. I asked then for authorization to gather quotes from local waste service providers, including specifically our contractor, Casella Services. I have those quotes and much more information here tonight for our review, but before I proceed, I wanted to reiterate why I brought this issue up for vote. Lunenburg does not offer any curbside pickup, while many other communities do provide such services. The Youngs Road facility is open only approximately 4 Saturdays in the spring, then again in the fall. Now, if you don't have a means for transporting your 4 to 5 months accumulation of yard waste, it presents an unwelcome burden. All the alternative methods of getting your waste to that site cost money, but so, of course, would this proposal. In the long run, I believe the folks here will find it, in many cases, to be more cost-effective and more of a constructive approach for people's time management. Now, I know there'll be some that oppose to going on a bi-weekly recyclable calendar as proposed. I myself have more recyclables than refuse. But in the, I'm sorry. You have to keep in mind that in order to provide this added service to all residents, we have to look for cost-saving measures while still in keeping with our commitments to current services provided. In closing, we should also consider the town's recent commitment to a greener community. The enactment of this added service would certainly help mitigate the frequency of permissible leaf burning and thus help us sustain a better air quality for all. So to begin with, I provided you all with some quotes that I got. I contacted a total of 6 waste service providers. You have before you 3. I think going as a local resident and trying to obtain quotes was a little bit more difficult than, say, a town selectman, somebody that works for the town. But I think we have enough here to get a basic understanding of how much we're looking at for the funds needed for this proposal. Additionally, I reached out to the city of Fitchburg and spoke with Stephen Curry, who is the Board of Health Director there, along with Mike Wall, the account representative for Waste Management Services, and learned that, in fact, we could negotiate with them for a closer disposal site with with whomever hauls it for us. That alone would help in reducing the cost that you see before you, because a lot of these quotes are based on that particular service provider disposing of the yard waste at their facility, which in some cases, I think with pertaining to JRM Hauling, which is located in Peabody, that's, I think, closer to where their site is. So that's quite a distance. I also learned through my research that the town of Danvers currently provides the identical services that I'm seeking for our residents here in Lunenburg. And when I asked how it was received from their residents, I was informed that, number one, it's been in existence for 12 years. People want more. They want more than the current 11 to 12 days offered. But because of financial constraints, that's what they offer, 11 to 12. So, again, you have the quotes in front of you. Now, some of those quotes provide just a basic, one cost, including everything, okay? Fuel, tonnage, the labor, the trucks going out. Some of them include all that. Then others talk about tonnage, price per ton. Now, from Mike Wall, he was generous enough to offer his services to me in providing me with some information. And one of the bits of information he gave me was for us to know that the average per ton right now going rate is about $25 to $35 a ton. So you can see that, for instance, Casella gave us a quote of $20 a ton. That's pretty good, I think. And he also stated, Mike, that is, that so you get an idea how much tonnage we have here, because this kind of service obviously has never been provided to the town, so we have no idea how many tons we're looking at. But I was told again by Mike Wall that 50 tons is a whole heck of a lot of yard waste, and he did not believe for a minute that we had that much. So based on that information, if we look, for instance, at Casella's quote is minimally $81,000 annually, okay, for the 12 weeks that I proposed, which would be from the spring, we'll say May 1st to October 31st for the summer months. $81,000 plus about $1,000 for, say, 50 tons at $20 a ton of the yard waste. That's $82,000 divided into 4,150 residences. Then each residence would be looking at $20 annually increase in their taxes. If we look at G.W. Shaw and Sons, now they are the current waste service provider for Townsend and Leominster. Their quote, if we take their minimum and their maximum, and we split it, say right in the middle at $131K, that would equate to $32 annually for each household. Now, myself, I did more research than what I have stated here. I wanted to keep this at a minimum, okay? But I went around contacting some landscapers, and I asked them, can you tell me how much it would cost just for you, if I do my own leaf, mowing my lawn, and I have about a third of an acre of mowed lawn there for you to pick up, how much will it cost? It varied. I said on a bi-weekly basis. I got one person that said $10, which was great. Then I had another one that said $65. Now remind you, this is just for hauling away grass on a bi-weekly basis. Now you multiply 10 by 12 and that's $120. Now I know that these numbers look really high, but when you talk to a resident and you say for $20 more in your taxes, you won't have to spend your weekends going. I see them go by because I live on Whalum Road right by the CVS. So I see on those Saturdays, I see all these vehicles come by with their yard waste. No, they can't spend the time going to their son's or their daughter's baseball practice, or in the fall go to their kids' football practices or games because they're busy doing that. That's when I mention about more constructive ways of managing our time. That's so precious because we all work 5 days a week and that's all we have is the weekend. So I'm hoping that we look at this and we take this into much consideration, because I really think it's a much-needed service that people would benefit from greatly. And I think once they got a taste of it, I think some people may say, well, I don't really need this service right now. I don't think I'm going to need it. But I think once the word, if it passed and the word got around to those people that didn't take advantage of it right now, and I think they would eventually. I really do. Now, the question also came up to me as well as, okay, well, if those people that don't necessarily need the service partake in it, do they have to pay? My answer to that would be yes, because this is a service, whether you adopt it for yourself, it's offered to all residents. I don't have children myself. I don't have any problem in paying my taxes for better schools. It's something that benefits everybody. Schools and public libraries and other necessities are there for all residents to benefit, whether you have children that attend that school or not. And I believe that this type of service is there for all residents to take advantage of if you want to. And it's there for those that are less fortunate, that are on a fixed income, that can't afford landscaping services and such. But I would like to take a moment to thank everyone for their help in providing me with much of this vital information. Carrie LaFleur in particular, Elaine Peterson, Lee King and Mike Nelson from Danvers, and especially Mike Wall from Waste Management Services. So,
Thank you.
I have a question.
sure.
You're just talking about leaves and grass. Is that the pickup you're talking about?
No, I have, I think most waste service companies, all right, that offer this type of service, they have their own set of limitations as to the size of branches, brush, for instance, that what it has to be cut down to, and a certain particular weight that a trash barrel would have to be in order for them to, to accept it. I have a printed out paper from the town that I once lived in California, for instance, that I could furnish you all with, so we all get an idea of what they accepted. And this was a town that I lived in called Discovery Bay. It's east of Oakland. Their population is, I believe it was about 13,000 people. And they offered this on a bi-weekly basis. Now, to get off that a little bit, I would like to just touch on one more thing. Now, G.W. Shaw mentions either plastic, in their quote, mentions either plastic containers or paper was acceptable. And Carrie, I spoke with you regarding this. Casella mentioned in their quote, we would accept it, the residents put it in paper bags. I don't really like the idea of paper bags, and I would push against that. Reason being, if you're by yourself and you've got a tractor mower or even just a push mower, a lot of them have the bags. It's very difficult for you to dump that into a bag by yourself. Not to mention the fact that it's paper. You have to now find a place to store it, because if we're going on a bi-weekly schedule, it's got to be dry. So now, for those residents that don't have a garage or a shed, what are they going to do with it? So that just opens up a whole nother can of worms. I would say that the residents, purchase a container, a 64-gallon container, and use that. So I just wanted to make sure I got that out as well.
I also wanted to mention that I lived in Danvers for 12 years, and Danvers is a very different community than this. It's very built up. There's not very much woods. It's just all residential. It really does not look like Lunenburg. So I could see the need for that more in Danvers.
Right.
And I remember when I visited my son in Davis, California, everybody had stuff out on the curb actually all the time.
Right.
Because 12 months a year, you get that sort of waste in California. I mean, I think those are pretty different scenarios than Lunenburg's.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but grass doesn't stop growing. All right, grass still grows here in the summer months, and we currently don't offer, our Youngs Road facility is closed to the public. It's closed. You don't even have the option of bringing it there. Now,
You know, I think that might be something to consider. You know, I was thinking that if Youngs Road were to open maybe every other Saturday throughout the summer.
Right.
And people could buy a permit to drop off waste on those weeks. And the permit would cover the expense of having one man the establishment, so that it could pay for itself.
Right.
There are other ways you can do it.
Right.
I just don't think that a large enough number of people in town require the service. And I have heard at school building committee meetings, everyone keeps saying it's only $20 a year for the resident who lives in the average single-family home. You know, many of us don't live in the average single-family home, and that $20 adds to the next $80 and the next $100, and pretty soon you have a really high tax bill.
right, I understand, but to take into consideration the majority and dismiss the minority, okay, I think we should take care of each other as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we should take care of each other and be considerate of the fact that there are some people that are not lucky enough to board at the woods. There are some people that don't own a truck. I would have to purchase a tow hitch for my vehicle. Then I would have to have a mechanic install that tow hitch. Then I would have to rent some kind of a trailer or purchase one.
Couldn't you put a container in your trunk?
Not with a third of an acre, no. I currently, last weekend, Phyllis, I had to borrow my brother's truck, which I was asked, how long is this going to continue? Why don't you buy your own truck? And I said, well, I don't have the funds for buying my own truck right now. So right now I'm burdened with having to finagle his work schedule and my weekend schedule to enable me to pick up his truck. And I should have taken a picture of his truck, because that was just one mow. And it filled in his entire flatbed. And at the time that I started, I only had an hour and a half to get my butt to the Youngs Road facility, so I was hauling it. And I was one of the last people there. I think I checked out of that Youngs Road facility at 5 minutes to 4. So,
Mrs. Perkins?
yeah, it's a little bit more challenging for me with a Nissan Altima and a third of an acre to mow.
First, I want to thank you for doing all this research. It's obvious that you put a lot of work into it. And I'm not opposed to looking at it. My concern is it's very late in the budget season. This is a substantial amount of money. If you're proposing a financial article at town meeting, where would you be proposing this funding come from?
Well, I understand it's late in the season right now for this to be considered for I believe that your fiscal budget is for 2017, correct? I would imagine I'm looking more towards an enactment of this maybe in 2018.
Okay, so
because I understand, I appreciate and I understand where you're coming from. It's late. I don't expect miracles.
Okay.
But it would be nice if we could keep the Youngs Road open for maybe the few summers here, this summer and next summer. And
so, I'm certainly not opposed to looking at it. I'm happy to hear you say you're not trying to push that for this budget cycle, because I think that would be incredibly difficult to do.
Of course, right.
Personally, and I don't know how we would do this, whether it's a non-binding referendum or whether, I would like to get a feel from the community as to whether or not they're interested in this. I do personally have some concerns. I wouldn't like to see the recycling go every other week. I would like to maintain that and add this additional service. That's just my personal opinion.
Yep.
But how do we go about getting feedback from the community on whether or not they're interested in pursuing something like this? And then I think we do put some more effort into it to develop it for our next budget cycle.
Right.
So how do we go about doing that? That's a question to the board.
Put it on a town meeting warrant article.
I'm sorry?
Okay, is this just to do a study or to?
I mean, she's making a full proposal. I mean,
My only concern is that by the way it's presented in the article, it appears that it's to be funded this fiscal year, and that personally I would oppose, because the way that the article is currently worded, rather than a study or rather than investigating as a non-binding referendum, I think that the way it's proposed currently would have to, if it were to pass, we would have to take the revenue associated with this article from another line item, and I think that would be problematic.
amend the article if that's the case and make it clear that it's for inclusion in
That's my
next
question,
fiscal
is
year's
how do we
budget.
change this?
Yeah, you can do that as part of the motion, or you make the motion and then you can move it to a committee, and during the discussion point, ask the town moderator to allow a straw vote of whether people would support it. It's important to note that unless you're going for an override, it wouldn't be additional taxes. It would come out of the existing
Existing
process.
budget, and
So
that's
it
my
So
concern.
therefore, if it was in next year's budget, it would come out of some increased budget somewhere. So that, just to let you know, that if you vote for something at town meeting, it doesn't automatically raise taxes, it just takes it from the taxes that are going to be raised already. So I think that if we go with the idea that we're going to try to get feedback from the town, we should talk to the town moderator in advance and see if he'd be willing to get a straw vote at that point.
And I guess that's my question to you, is would you be willing to entertain that, is to get a vote from the town meeting as to whether or not they're interested in pursuing this and looking at it for fiscal 18?
Yes.
Okay, rather than
If the
going
town-
forward with the budget request, which would mean, as Mr. Ebersol said, which would mean if this were to pass as it's worded currently, the funding for this program would have to come from another line item within the budget. So I guess I'm asking you, are you willing to reword this item, this warrant, to be a non-binding vote to see if there's interest by the community, and then work towards incorporating this in the budget next year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would.
The other alternative, we could do a Survey Monkey.
I was thinking that, because that would be, we have that ability to do that now, and we'd reach more residents, I think, that way.
When is our negotiation with our waste carriers due?
It's a 10-year contract that we entered into in 2011. So we're a long ways out.
I guess I want to be clear, so the petitioner wants this to happen, and she's willing to say fiscal year 2018, but I'm hearing that people on the board are looking for a non-binding vote.
We can't vote for 2018 at this town meeting, I don't believe.
No.
So we would be getting an indication of should this be included in next year's budget, the following year's budget.
FY18's, but
Right.
Okay,
We can't propose something without a funding source. We
Right.
can't approve something without a funding mechanism.
so then any vote at town meeting is really, then you might as well just do a Survey Monkey, because then what is the point of 200 or 300 people at town meeting for a non-binding vote anyway?
Well, I think it gives an idea of what people would be willing to vote, and you could have some discussion on it. $81,000 or $50,000, do people want to spend the money on this or something else?
It gives the proponent an opportunity to present the plan, as she did tonight, to the public, to give some ideas of the costs associated with the plan, and it will give feedback to us as to whether or not people are interested. In addition, I think we can couple that with a Survey Monkey survey to reach a broader percentage of the residents, but we as a board have a much better understanding of the interest of the community, and they have we're not going to incorporate all of the information that was just given to us in a survey question.
Right.
I think that the town meeting is a good venue to hear a report by the applicant who's done this legwork and to get the feel of the community. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to present the information that's been compiled and give us some marching orders.
Right. One last thing as well. You'll see in Jerry's correspondence that he mentions he didn't really believe that there would be much cost savings in my idea to go to a bi-weekly schedule, because he states that our trucks are still going to be out every week. Yes, they will be in fact out every week during the summer months, but the cost savings comes into play through the winter months if you just have it bi-weekly recyclable. And that's why I say that, in order to try to provide this extra added service, we got to look for cost measure savings, and that is one area where how we could do it. I believe
Doesn't seem it, because he said that the trucks are, they bought a truck specially, so it picks up the rubbish and the recyclables. So the same truck is going down the road with the same driver, whether you pick up the recyclables or not. So that doesn't save you money.
Well, right now, we're providing a weekly two-time service. We're providing 52 weeks of refuse and 52 weeks of recyclable.
But what the man said was, when they got the contract with us, they bought a truck specifically that took rubbish and recyclables.
Yeah.
That's the truck.
Well, yes, a truck is still going to be out every week, correct.
So
but,
you don't really save much money.
But they're not, but in the winter months, they're only going to be picking up refuse on 1 week,
But you still have the same driver, and he's still doing the same run. That's why they said there was no cost savings.
Yeah, well, we're paying for the no-sort recycling. We're paying for that. If we had people sorting, we would be paying a lot less. But we're paying for our residents to have that extra added service of not having to sort everything out. So there would be one extra week of that we wouldn't be paying for that.
He seemed to indicate it wouldn't save us money.
I understand. I understand what he's saying. But I would differ with his suggestion.
So if you're willing to rework the motion, and I think you could work with the town manager on that, to actually just do basically a straw poll, it would still give you the opportunity to present, it would give the opportunity for everyone at town meeting to comment and to give feedback, and then we could work on putting together a survey provided that town meeting is on board with it,
yes.
We could then put together a survey for the rest of the community to see if there's interest, and then work on trying to incorporate it in the budget.
Okay, I think that's a great idea. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our 7:30 is to begin to talk about annual town meeting articles, and this one is relative to Article 29, the Summer Street project easements.
Good evening. My name's Trish Domigan. I'm the project manager from Vanessa Hang and Breslin that's been working on this project for a number of years now, and I'm just going to give you a status update of what the project design is, the right-of-way, and then the environmental permitting. Selectman Brittman did a great job of explaining the MPO, and if there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question as to the timeline. Have you gotten that to DOT, or is that still in the works?
Construction schedule. So I spoke, let me talk specifically about the tip, and then I'll back into the status of everything else. So I had a phone call with Arthur Frost in District 3 about the project itself and asked whether or not I had to put together, it's not called a construction schedule in DOT world, it's called a construction time duration, and it's a very comprehensive schedule, construction schedule, that actually defines what the materials and labor is required for a project. And it's an extremely it's a labor-intensive schedule that DOT is requiring. So I spoke with him about what the requirements are and why this project would warrant such a detailed schedule. And he referred me back to the Boston office. So I spoke with the Boston office, the project manager who's facilitating this project from Mass DOT, Larry Cash, and it doesn't warrant that. When I spoke with Arthur again, he also mentioned that he would defend the ACing, the advanced construction of this project with FHWA. It is a complicated project. It has full depth a pavement reconstruction, sidewalks on both sides, a full drainage system, and it does warrant, or it will be eligible for advanced construction funding. So I think we're okay with that. We won't have to put together a construction schedule. It's obvious that the amount of work out on Summer Street in the 3 communities is going to take longer than 2. It's probably going to take 3 construction seasons to complete.
So for the TIP process,
Yep.
do you know if we need to obtain that AC status prior to the TIP being voted? Because that was my concern, is listening to Federal Highway.
Right.
He talked about the approval that's needed from federal on this project to be an AC project. Do we need to acquire that? And I think that was Brad Harris's from MRPC's hesitancy in putting it over multiple years is without that federal approval.
The staff is evaluating the TIP, as you had mentioned, 2 different scenarios, whether or not this would be a 2017 advertisement date for construction or a 2018 advertisement. Those are the 2 scenarios that they're investigating.
Well, they're actually, Brad is now in the process of putting together another scenario for the MPO to review on the 25th, which
Including
would
the
give this
AC.
project the AC status.
Right.
But he was hesitant to do that without the project actually having achieved AC status, and that's my concern.
Right. So when I spoke with Brad, and he is looking at the different scenarios, and speaking with Arthur, and Brad works directly with Mass
Arthur,
DOT District 3, Arthur is going to say that this is eligible
Okay.
for AC
Okay.
construction.
And you plan to be at the MPO meeting?
On the 25th.
Good,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Sure.
I understood from Mrs. Bertram's update about the budget increase, but I'd like to hear more about that.
Sure.
And well, I'll let you explain it, and then
Part 1
I may
and then
have a
part 2?
public-
Okay, so when we develop a 25% design plan, it's based on what we design for project, pavement depths, the extent of drainage. Actually, even at the 25% plan, we had a sidewalk on one side of Summer Street. We submit that to Mass DOT, and then we receive comments from all of the departments, Boston and District, from Mass DOT. And we got comments on pavement. We got comments, I don't know if you recall, but to put sidewalks on both sides of Summer Street, which was something that we were trying to avoid. And also the amount of drainage that we had to install to reduce the gutter spread of the sheet flow that goes on the roadway. So with all of the different and additional construction items that we had to include in the project, it escalated the cost of the project. That and also construction projects right now are just going, there's a lot of work out there, so the bids are a lot higher, so it just kind of elevates the construction cost estimate. Now, in saying that, after the MPO meeting, and we've sharpened our pencils, we did a value engineering internal to VHB to see what elements of the project we're going to change, but we're not going to reduce the design. So, for instance, we're putting in granite curbing along the roadway itself. The granite curbing, there's different types and it's different costs associated with it. So we're going to use granite curbing, but at a lesser cost. And in doing that, and just taking a look at all of the design components, we've actually been able to reduce the cost of the project by, right now, about $1.5 million. So even though it escalated up to $10 million, we're about at $8.5 million, which is about $1.5 million over what the 25% plan was.
And does that change, thank you for that explanation.
No problem.
And does that change anything that, our contribution or anything, or is this all covered within?
It's all covered, the construction costs are all covered within the TIP.
In the project, okay.
Right, and the final, it's going out for public review, is that correct, on May 25th?
What is going out for public
The
review? If we vote it.
Draft tip,
The
right.
draft tip is supposed to be voted May 25th. One concern that I have with that $8.5 million number.
Yep.
Does that exceed the target funds for the region? I don't think it does.
That is our engineer's estimate, you're correct, so the target is $9.2 million.
Yeah, if we don't achieve, we can't get AC.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, okay.
We're working,
Okay.
we're working.
Okay.
So what we're doing is, that's the engineer's estimate, that's the raw cost of the items that go into the construction. With that, we also have the utility pole costs that have to go
Okay.
included, that's a contingency, the Mass DOT construction and administration costs, police, things like that, that also get tacked on to the engineer's estimate. So you'll still be at about $10 million.
Okay, even, so rather than the 13, when you and I had talked on the phone, you had indicated we were at 10 with the requirements of Mass DOT, you estimated, and the
13,
escalation
right.
factor, it would be 13.
Yep.
So now we're at 8.5 with the requirements of DOT, you think we'll be at 10?
I think so, about that. We just wanted to take a look at it to see what components we could scale back on.
Okay.
Because I think Arthur had a slight heart attack when he
At 13
realized
million,
that
yeah.
$13 million was the
Yeah.
cost of the project, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just working with DOT. We're going to sit down with them and just go through the assumptions that we made in scaling the project back a smidge and then move forward from there.
So do you know what figure Brad is incorporating in the tip scenarios?
Our estimate and our evaluation QC is going to be done this Friday.
Okay.
I'm submitting it to Mass DOT for evaluation at that point. Before I came here tonight, I emailed Brad, asked him what the status of the staff recommendations were for the 2017 to 21 tip. When he gets back to me tomorrow, and I let him know that I'm submitting the cost estimate to District 3 on Friday.
Okay.
So I will work with him so that he has the correct number
Okay.
for his evaluation.
Okay.
No problem. So in saying that, the 75% plans were done, they were done at the beginning of April. And in doing that, we're talking about the construction costs did increase, and we're reevaluating that. So once the 75% plans are done, so 75% is about, it's a final design stage, but it's not cast in stone. We still have a few submissions to go with Mass DOT for the design. We could determine what the right-of-way needs are in the environmental permitting. So I'll just go into environmental permitting first. We are in the process of filing a notice of intent with the 3 conservation commissions in Lunenburg's. We're going to be filing on May 18th, so we're filing this month for the first public hearing on June 1st. So we will be presenting in front of conservation. There are 2 locations where we need their permission. It's just reconstruction of existing drainage outfalls. One is, I think they're actually both on the MBTA property, so we're just reconstructing it. There's significant erosion at the Baker's Brook outfall. We're going to be fixing that, putting in some stone just to stabilize the slope where that outfall is going. The NEPA clearance, so not only do we have to go through local conservation, we also have to go through federal, which is the NEPA process, and we just had to give them paperwork on the project, explain what the project is all about. Because this isn't on a 2016 tip, it's not being reviewed by Mass DOT just yet. We submit it to Mass DOT and they submit it to FHWA. They expect to start reviewing it the beginning of this summer for clearance by July or August of this year, and that's important because you cannot start the right-of-way process until that federal clearance occurs. So you're going to town meeting this Saturday? Is that what it is? Okay, to talk about the right-of-way process, but in DOT world and FHWA, you really can't start talking about the easements with the property owners until this NEPA process gets cleared. But I will anyway. So for the right-of-way, there are 37 temporary easements in Lunenburg that are required, and 2 permanent easements. So the permanent easements, as I had mentioned, were just for drainage outfalls. We're just reconstructing what's out there right now. The drainage is in really poor shape. We're just trying to bring it up to standards, meet the stormwater standards, DEP stormwater guidelines. The temporary easements, the 37 easements, that sounds like a lot, but what we're doing is, because we're regrading the roadway and on both sides of the roadway, we're just going to be blending on to the property that extends beyond the layout line. So any of the grass or lawn surfaces will just be blending in and putting down some seeds so that the grass just continues. Also, we're reconstructing driveway aprons that go into people's parking lots and driveways. There's a few locations where we are going to be reconstructing portions of the parking lots, just because of grading of the roadway and going into private property. So that's the reason why we need the 37 temporary easements. Once the federal process is cleared, there's going to be a few neighborhood meetings so that we can talk about what the needs are on the individual properties. And then talk to people about donating those easements for the construction of this project. So that will all happen this summer, probably the summer into the fall. I think that's it. The other thing was the tip status, and I think we went over that. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one other additional question.
Sure.
You talked about the easements in Lunenburg. Where are we with Fitchburg and Leominster?
They're about the same. So the Mass DOT met with Carrie, Jack, and I, and another person from my office in April to go over the right-of-way process. So the right-of-way person from Mass DOT, who's Shirley Shriver, met at the same time. I think it was like a week or so ahead of time with both Fitchburg and Leominster. So everyone's advancing or progressing at the same time frame.
Okay, they're substantial. I know we don't anticipate problems in Lunenburg, and the majority of them are temporary. Are there any permanent are there substantially more permanent easements or takings in Fitchburg or Leominster, or are they this sort of in the same situation?
For Leominster, we are reconstructing some of the low stone walls that are next to the sidewalk. If you drive up the roadway, the sidewalks are in pretty rough shape because of the trees and the tree roots that have just pulled up the cement
Talking about
concrete.
removing those trees?
Some of those trees, unfortunately, have to be removed.
Okay.
So we'll need some easements for the reconstruction of walls and things like that. The other thing is we will need some utility pole easements in both of those communities, just for the placement of guy wires or the relocation of a utility pole because of where the roadway is going to go.
Obviously, my concern is if we encounter problems in Fitchburg and Leominster, that's going to halt the project. So I just think it's important that we're aware of what's going on in all across the communities.
Sure.
So as of right now, based on any public hearings you've held in Leominster or Fitchburg, are you anticipating
Any
issues
problems?
with the easements?
No problems. I think they're both working similar to Lunenburg on getting the right-of-way secured.
Okay.
So I've got a question when you talk about rebuilding the drainage outfalls in light of the new NIPD's permitting process. Is there going to be any upgrade expectation of the stormwater?
No, I think no matter what, the NIPD's permit process, and I think you have to investigate or evaluate all your drainage systems, you'll have the plans for the full drainage system. So you'll have something to put towards the NIPD's permit that you have to secure, but it's not going to influence it really.
So the outfall that would not have to be rebuilt in the future for the purposes of protecting Baker Brook?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay. The bulk of the rest of our agenda has to do with discussions on various warrant articles that we agreed we would take up prior to town meeting. I'm going to suggest that we take the Lunenburg Water District Study Committee first, because I see there are several people here that I assume would like to be part of that discussion.
Evening.
You?
For those that don't know me, I know you all do. I'm Mark Bursch. I'm the chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners. And I'm here to talk with the board tonight about Article 45. I have a couple questions for the board. Who sponsored or wrote the article? Who's presenting the article?
Well, it's presented by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so typically an article is made up. If I want to present an article, I come to you and I discuss the article. So the board as a whole?
Yeah.
Okay. So then my second question that I have is why? What's the intention of the article? Everybody presents an article. Every article at town meeting has an intent. So I'm looking for clarification of the intent of this article.
Okay.
I'll offer why I brought it forward. So it was to, basically, right now, we have a separate municipal entity in the Lunenburg Water District that has separate elections, separate meetings, that, for the most part, goes under the radar of most people in town. They don't really have any visibility into it. And as a logical connection, I mean, as far as the services that it offers the town, that for the purpose of public involvement, for public participation, public awareness, public visibility, and voting participation and enfranchisement and representation, I think it would be better served under the town, because then the whole town would have all those visibility issues resolved. It would also have a one place that all the services in town could be, information could be gotten from. All the election days would be the same, all town meeting days would be the same. So that was the intent behind it.
Okay. What benefits do you see that this will give the members of the Lunenburg Water District?
But let me just stop and remind everybody that the warrant article calls for a study.
Correct.
And
I'm looking for what benefits of the study.
Okay.
What's the benefit to the study?
Okay, I think the intent of the board was to get the benefit of the input of the town as to whether they believed it would be to their benefit in terms of whether it was a separate entity or a combined entity with the town. And it would give the study committee an opportunity to look at all the costs, look at all the benefits, look at all the downsides, and make a recommendation as to whether it would be something that they would want to consider at next year's or a fall special town meeting.
Okay. So I guess I look at it as if we're talking about a study or a test of the Board of Water Commissioners or the Lunenburg Water District. We're fiscally responsible. We're DEP compliant and beyond. We currently work with the fire department, the police department, DPW, planning, and the town administrator flawlessly. There's been no precedence that I can see that a municipality has taken over another municipality or merged without conflict, or that I can see it's been done. So I don't personally see a need for the study. Since 1939, 70 years approximately, we've been fiscally responsible. The members of the Lunenburg Water District have an efficient means to communicate and participate in district business. We have a responsive professional staff that works well with the district members and the professionals of the town of Lunenburg. The Board of Water Commissioners and its professional staff does not support this article in any way, shape, or form. I'd like to thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I actually have a question on the article. When this article was voted on, we talked about whether or not there was a cost associated with this article. Is there a cost, and is it in the budget? Does this study committee have any revenue stream, and has it been budgeted?
It does not.
Okay, so this is a study committee which would not have any funding by which to hire a consultant. This would be volunteers that would be appointed at no cost. Is that, because we talked at one time about they would need some money to do a study and I don't know what was finally decided. So there is no funding associated with this.
It's my understanding that it was a voluntary committee to do some fact-finding and that there was no budget associated with it.
Okay, thank you.
Is that everybody else's recollection? Yeah.
Right.
And that we're just looking at the issue. Does it make sense for the water district to continue as it has, or would it be better for the water district to come under the umbrella of the town? The water district could still work in the same way that it's worked. It would just be under the umbrella of the town. The water district had its annual meeting just last week, is that right?
A couple of weeks ago.
A couple of weeks ago. Does anybody know how many people were at that meeting? Voters, how many voters?
There were about 82 voters who voted in the election, and approximately 25 people that were at the meeting. I was at the meeting.
And what kind of decisions did those 20 people make who were at the meeting?
They did what was typical of their meetings, choose officers, choose their annual budget, authorize temporary borrowing. They authorized the borrowing for the new garage that's going to be constructed. think that those are the major items at that point.
How much did they authorize to borrow for the garage?
I was at the meeting as well. I mean, I don't think anybody's questioning that it was a valid meeting that had members and the members voted. And I think it's important for us to reiterate the point that we made when we originally discussed this, that this is not in any way an attempt to discredit or to say that the water district isn't doing a fine job the way they're doing it. But it's an opportunity for us to look at whether there's a better way and to look at the pluses and minuses of whether the town would like us to do that study.
But just to close the loop, the amount for the garage?
1.2 million? 1.4 million is what we had discussed. And there was, probably less people than there would be at town meeting. But it went much quicker than town meeting. And we only have focus on one thing, and that is on the water and the business to deal with the water.
Is there a quorum requirement for your annual town meeting?
Our annual meeting, I don't believe so, no.
And just by chance, the annual meeting that increased the size of the district last year, do you know how many? I've asked, and I haven't gotten it. Granted, I asked today.
When we increase it, I would have to defer that. Okay. I would have to look that up myself.
I asked for how many people at the last 5 years were at the annual town meetings and how many people voted. Because I think that's important. That's part of my point about voter participation. Because I believe that last year it was somewhere between 10 and 15 people voted to increase the district and basically dilute everybody else's vote in the district with very little, if any, publicity and any knowledge about it. So, and not having a quorum, and we had to stop our town meeting last year because 50 people weren't there.
Correct, but if you look at the efficiency in the way that we have our meetings, and it's just about water, when we have our meetings, it's you can go to the meeting and you get to that part. I mean, I came and I sat for 45 minutes tonight to get to talk to you about water. When people come to our meetings, they sit at our meetings and they talk about water. So
I understand that.
So
I don't know
when you're talking about coming under the town,
yep.
I see additional layers and I see a longer process. And if people are interested in something, granted, they'll either wait for that process or they'll come to it. Okay, the people I feel that had an interest in water, I have an interest because I became a commissioner. I believe they come to our meetings, and they're pretty accessible, and we've done more because essentially your article talks about information, but there's all that information and trying to change is going to come at a cost. At some point, it's going to come at a cost.
And what cost would that be?
I would say that when you change things, typically it costs more money, but that's just me. I mean, I think we're talking about $10 million on Summer Street. That's changing Summer Street. So that's money that's going to be spent.
I don't see how the apples of orange, Summer Street.
What you're talking about doing
yep.
is simply, from what I understand, is making things easier and a transition of information. But I think there's a lot more involved. It's not been done. You have not seen a merger of districts. I have not seen, there was a case where I saw 2 districts within the same community try to merge. And I read into that, and they did not complete the merger.
Well, again, the indication that it's not been done, I don't think lends itself to a pros or cons of either. Just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean it shouldn't be done.
I personally, I'd like to see somebody do something before I try it myself, because typically, it doesn't end well. But
I mean, if I could, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, go ahead.
I'm saying, part of the things I've said, as I said earlier when I introduced this, was also the fact that I think that there's a certain amount of voter disenfranchisement in town. So the water district covers 70% of the town. So there's 30% people who live in those areas.
It covers 70%. So that means 70% of the town population is not on Lunenburg water.
But there are people who aren't.
Right.
Okay. So those people who live in that area don't have a say in what happens to things that I believe there's $40,000 that this town, from taxpayer monies, pay to the water district because of all the public buildings, so they have no say in how the water district is run at all, because they're outside of the area. They have no say in what happens to, resources within the town of Lunenburg in that regard, and water is a big issue. So, I think there's a certain amount of disenfranchisement that goes on from that, from the people in the district. I consider myself very connected, but, I didn't know when the district was, and it was, reported that, it was in the last bill. And I looked back at my last bill, and so, yeah, I don't have a copy of this for the TV, but the announcement of it is down at the bottom, not in any special color, not in any special thing, after a whole thing of numbers about usage and everything. There was no way that most people, and we could take a straw poll in town, but there's no way that most people would even look at that. So they didn't really know. So yeah, you put in an announcement of it, but how many people are seeing it? It wasn't a slip of paper you could have put in. Then I looked at the election time, and for water commissioners, again, even in the district itself, water commissioners play an important role. As commissioner, would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So would you want people to vote in your election?
Yeah.
Okay. How many hours was polls open?
I believe it was 3 hours.
2 hours. 2 hours on a Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Anybody could apply for an absentee ballot.
Right, but you have to know about it too. But even on an election that we're going to have in a few weeks, that there aren't any contested things, the elections are open from 7 in the morning to 5, as the chair announced. These are the kind of things that I'm looking at for voter involvement and district people involvement. I think that you do the services of water really well. I've said that. Mm-hmm. And this is not anything that should be deemed to be punitive. I think we should encourage more involvement from the people in the district and even in the town at large. That's why I brought this forward.
Okay.
I don't know, and again, it's a study. And if the study says, to bring the 5 employees that you have, because you have 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so to bring 5 employees on, if it becomes unmanageable, that study committee would say that. So it's managed, it's not even anything decisive. It's to vote for a study to see if it makes sense, and also to get the feeling from town meeting and from the town at large, if they feel it makes sense, to take an entity as in entirety and put it over here. So sewer commissioner, the water commissioners become just like sewer commissioners. They have their own enterprise fund. Your whole budget stays intact. And there's very few changes, and most of them would involve the employee part, than anything. That's it. How the employees would transition.
And the warrant article just asks to look at it.
Right.
To just study it. Why wouldn't you be willing or interested in looking at it? Maybe it would be to your advantage. How narrow-minded can you be? To not even want to look at it.
Not even going there.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, as was talked about, one of the reasons that this was brought up was because of the vote to expand the district. And I think that at that time, it was uncovered that there was a problem with communication. And I want to applaud the Water District for the work that they've done to try to increase that communication. Are there things that could be done better, like a slip of paper? Yes, there are. But I do have to say, I think that the notice was published in the paper, it was advertised on Facebook, it was advertised on the website. I think communication has gotten much better since that issue came to light. And I do think, the reason that I voted against this and will continue to vote against it is because I think that we don't have enough information to make the decision. And I don't think it's going to be a seamless transition. I think that there are costs associated with absorbing another district. I think there are, yes, it's only 5 employees, but we've done a very good job at bringing all of our employees and all of our unions in line with each other. I think that we'll find that would be very difficult to do with the Water District employees. I also think that there are issues that relate strictly to water, and I think that the Water District as a whole does a very good job of operating the Water District. And at this point, if it's something we want to investigate, I think that we can do that now by working cooperatively with the Water District. I think that this article, personally, I think it sets the Water District against the town, and I know everyone's saying, well, it's just, to bring us under one umbrella and to work together. The reality is this is going to divide us.
But it's just to look at it.
Let me just can I just finish?
Yeah, 'cause I'm narrow-minded.
That's my thought is in my opinion, I think that there are a lot of other issues, and I think that before we present a study without a clear objective and a clear goal, the other issue that I have is we talk about water resources, is Lunenburg water resource. The decisions that are made by the water district relative to water, whether it's a garage or whether it's expenditures, are paid for by the users of the water district. And the people that pay to the water district. So as a water district customer, I would have concerns about those votes being open to the whole town, because frankly, those votes only affect me. I pay for those decisions, not the entire town. So that in and of itself is problematic for me. You know, we can see what the discussion is on town meeting floor, but that's why I voted the way I did, and why I will continue to vote the way I did.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Russo.
I'm supporting the study committee because I believe that, as has been discussed at the water district meetings and other times, that this is, water is a Lunenburg resource. Whether we call it Lunenburg water or town water or Lunenburg Water District water, I am concerned with the fact that the Water District is currently negotiating an intermunicipal agreement with Lancaster to provide water to economic development in Lancaster, not in Lunenburg. Granted, there is not an economic development proposal in Lunenburg for them to respond to, but I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the fact that Shirley is talking about putting a well in the same aquifer. I still do not know the amount of water that the town of Lunenburg is going to need in the future. I believe that this, as a water taker, that this is better for the whole purposes of protecting Lunenburg water. And frankly, I think the town of Lunenburg should be voting on whether things should go to Lancaster as opposed to the water district. That's why I believe the study committee will raise all the concerns, and the study committee may come up with saying, no, keep it separate, or they may come up with something in between.
Just want to comment on a few things that were said before, and that is, first of all, the intent of this was not to be adversarial. I said that from the beginning. I couldn't say it better again. If there is any feeling of adversarialness, it's not the intent of the article, and it's the intent of people reading into it. Okay? That's the first and foremost. I think this is a study thing. If somebody wants to assume that there's going to be costs involved, and assume that we can't bring in people and employees if it was decided to do that, those are assumptions, and that's why you want a study committee, so you can provide the hard data to do that. So we changed the article so that it would be a study committee, not committing the town to anything except the study. I would hope that we would work in communion with the water district. Again, I don't see it as adversarial. I've been asked by the chair of the water commissioners why I proposed it. I presented to him and to the rest of the board and people here why I proposed it. That's fine. They disagree. I think that's fine. Disagreements are fine. I just think it's up for the town to decide. As for water district takers or customers paying for it, well, we have scenarios like that. The sewer commission has the sewer district members, people who are on the sewer commission, pay the fees, but the whole town gets to decide what happens with the sewer in general. And so I don't see any difference between that. There are sides to both of those arguments, and I think it's something to have a fuller discussion about. Again, I want to be very clear, this is not punitive at all. I will say that there are adversarial components to it, and not to bring it up, but I have to, for the full sake of disclosure, when the water district on their Facebook page compares that if we do this, and they ask the people of Lunenburg, do you want another Flint, Michigan, I have to take exception to exaggerations like that. Now, I'm assuming that the water commissioners agree with that statement. It's on their webpage, on their Facebook page. I think that's really an outrageous kind of assumption that you're going to scare people into thinking that, oh my God, there's going to be lead in our waters because the town took over not took over, but subsumed or became part of, the water district became part of the town. That creates an adversarial condition. I don't think an article asking for a study commission, asking for the residents of the town to see if they support it. If they don't support it, then they've spoken. That's fine.
It'll be an interesting town meeting.
All righty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please.
I'm John Esposito, live on Malpas Road. I'm a water commissioner also. I've heard a few things from Mrs. Luck, Mr. Alonso, Mr. Toll. For 1 second, Tom, I do not believe that you didn't know anything about our annual meeting, the 28th of March. We posted all over town, just like it's supposed to be posted, so I don't believe for 1 second that you didn't know about our meeting, right?
So
Not 1 second.
I want to understand.
No, I'm not done yet.
Well, no, you are for right now. I just want to make it clear. So you're saying that you don't believe me, so I'm not telling you the truth.
I'm saying
Are you saying that I did know?
I'm saying that I cannot believe that you did not know about our March 28th meeting.
So you're questioning my veracity and telling you that I did not know about it.
You're questioning it.
I'm questioning my own
I'm
veracity?
telling you that I do not believe it. Okay. Now, for you, Mrs. Luck, you can't understand why we just don't have a study. It's just a study. Why spend the taxpayers' money for a study?
It's not going to cost anything.
It's free?
Yes.
And who's going to do the study?
I bet we'll get a bunch of volunteers.
Really?
I bet.
Okay, I hope you do.
Me too.
Why have a study to try to take over the Lunenburg Water District when it's an absolute perfectly run department? Perfectly run. And what do the selectmen know about running a water district?
We don't know anything about running the water district, and we don't need to know anything about running the water district. We are just wondering if it would be a good idea for the water district to move under the umbrella of the town, as it would be if we were establishing a water district out of the gate today. We just want to take a look at the issues. What would be good about it? What would be bad about it? We would like some volunteers to put their heads together and investigate the issue.
Why don't you tell me what would be good about it?
I believe that's what the study is for.
Well, I mean, you must have some kind of an idea you want to take it over.
We don't. We want to study it. We want to take a look. I am flabbergasted that the thought of looking at something is so objectionable. It's like you're afraid of the answer.
And we're not afraid of anything. We're just wondering why the selectmen want to take over the water district, which is a perfectly run entity since 1939, and you want to step in, and you want to put it under the umbrella of the town.
We don't know that.
So, Mr. Chair, I have three responses. First of all, I'm sure it's not perfectly run, because nothing's perfectly run. So there are things like expanding
you said
the district.
Yourself that it's almost perfectly run.
I said it's well run. I don't disagree. Not perfectly run.
I don't have any complaints from anybody.
There were a whole people that overturned the vote, the district being increased. That was a vote against that. No.
Was that because it wasn't run perfectly?
Yes, because people didn't want the district expanded. That's why the special meeting was called and it was revoked.
That had nothing to do with that.
So that's number one. Number two is I object to the use of the word that first of all, the selectmen, and then taking over. Number one, the selectmen aren't taking over anything.
You're trying to?
No. We are asking if the townspeople want the water district to be part of the town. The selectmen do not run anything in the Parks Commission. They don't run anything in the Sewer Commission. They don't run anything in the school committee.
You don't oversee any of that?
No.
No.
They have all elected bodies that take care of that. The school committee takes care of the schools, not the selectmen. The sewer commission is elected to take care of the sewers, not the selectmen. So there's not any power play that you keep presenting that the selectmen want to take over. It is an open question.
How do the conservation members get on the board?
That's not an elected body, so they get appointed by the selectmen. The selectmen do not overturn them, we appoint them.
Okay.
We can't supersede their decisions, if that's what you're asking.
Of course you can.
There's a lot of things you don't believe, Mr. Esposito, but these are all things that are true.
I've lived in this town for 72 years, and I've seen it all. All right?
I'm sure you have.
There are a lot of things I don't believe.
I can't make you believe things that are true. What can I say?
That's absolutely right. I just completely disagree with what you're trying to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to another one. I see we also have some members of the school community with us, so why don't we take up 28, 30, and 31. So 28 is a replacement of the existing, oh, wait a minute, 27 actually comes first, right? It's the authorization of the cell tower. We have...
Yeah, hold on, I'm just looking for my agenda.
Okey-doke.
So, I'll just introduce it. Next, we'd like to take up two articles together, Article 27 and 28. These have to do with the replacement of the existing turf field that is on the school complex. As you know, the Parks Commission is putting forward both of these articles, and this board asked the Parks Commission years ago if it would look at a funding mechanism for replacement of the existing turf field, because we knew the existing turf field was coming to the end of its useful life, and we didn't have funds set aside for replacement of that. So the Parks Commission, over the years, has looked at this item. As you know, we've had some turnover in the Parks Commission, so this issue has taken a long time to gain some traction and move forward, but we do think at this point that we have a viable funding solution for replacement of the existing turf field, the surrounding track, at this time and going forward when it needs to be replaced. So I'm not sure how you would like to take this up. The first article is a request to authorize a lease, a cell tower lease. This is part of our funding scenario. There is an existing lighting tower that is adjacent to this field. It's approximately 60 feet in height, and we would be looking for authorization to replace that existing light pole with a cell tower. And there is a funding stream that comes with that. And if I could ask John Londa, the facilities director for the school, if he could explain that. He has been the lead person in issuing the request for proposals, and he can talk about the proposals that we received and the one that we would recommend.
So the two we did receive multiple proposals. After considering those, we're recommending the Verizon proposal as the one that seems the most beneficial. The funding stream would be $30,000 annually with a 3% annual escalator. It would be monthly payments commencing once upon a building permit was issued. That they're proposing is to take the southeast pole on the turf field, remove that, replace it with a 75-foot monopole with the antenna array on the top. It would have the lighting arrays put back on it and continue to be able to operate for use for the field. The initial term of the contract would be proposed as 10 years, with the addition of four additional 5-year periods for a total of 30 years. Should the project go 10 years and then there'd be no interest to continue to operate a cell tower there, Verizon would be responsible for replacing the monopole with a 60-foot light tower. The school committee has voted on this. They are willing to support this being on school grounds and be willing to give an easement to allow the utilities that the cell tower would need, which would be both electrical power and data, to come through the school site to where the base unit would be near the pole. Because it's a long-term lease, of course, we need approval from town meeting to be able to do those kind of things. So that's where we stand as of today.
Does this replace any existing cell tower, or is this an additional cell tower in the town?
This would be a new tower. It's going to have orientations of the antenna arrays to the north, east and to the southeast.
But was there a pole there before? Was there a
A light-
tower
a
there
light-
before?
There's currently a tower there now, or a pole there, but it is a sports lighting pole that's 60-foot tall. So
There's
the
no
replacement
revenue, it doesn't,
Doesn't generate, is needed to be able to put the lights on the field.
Can you give an idea of the projected revenue stream? And in addition, is there any issues with planning board, or have you talked with the planning director? Is this allowable by our current zoning?
So this will need a special permit,
Okay.
and as far as I know, that has not been filed at this point.
Okay, and the revenue stream?
The revenue stream, like I said, will be $30,000 in the opening year. It has a 3% escalator, so for the first 10 years of service, the revenue stream is $343,000.
Okay.
And then beyond that, the lease could continue up for an additional 4 5-year periods.
Okay, on the special permit, applying for the special permit requires a package, and it requires, plans, et cetera. Is it assumed that Verizon would be seeking that special permit, and those costs would be borne by Verizon, not the town?
Yes, all the costs on this will be borne by Verizon.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, why is the revenue not just going to the town? Why is the revenue going to the Parks Department?
Well, we started by looking at generating a revenue stream to pay for the replacement of the existing field. And this was proposed as a revenue-generating mechanism.
So what if the town doesn't vote to replace the artificial turf field? What happens to the revenue stream then?
If we move forward with this item, it would be general fund revenue.
So it would not go to the Parks Department if the artificial turf field is not approved?
It would not. It's revenue that we're generating to help defray the cost of replacement of the turf field, but it's not Parks Department or Parks Commission revenue. It is a general fund revenue that we would...
Regardless, it goes to the general fund.
Yeah, that we would earmark for replacement costs.
Okay. So basically, the town's paying that $30,000 for the artificial turf field maintenance?
Replacement.
It's one component of the...
It's an opportunity to help defray the cost, but regardless, it's revenue of $30,000 a year to go into the general fund, and as the town manager said, the goal would be to earmark that to offset the cost of the turf.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to speak for the school committee, and the superintendent is here, but the school committee voted to support the easement. They're voting to support use of their property for this particular endeavor. They may or may not have a different opinion if we weren't moving forward with the turf field.
Mr. Chair, the article, as in the printed warrant, says to authorize the Parks Commission or Board of Selectmen to enter into a lease or lease. Have we decided whether we're going to have it be the Board of Selectmen or the Parks?
We have not, and we need to make that decision.
It would be my recommendation that it be the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
And I would agree.
Just to keep contracting with the town manager.
Yeah, it would be unusual to have it with another board, but at the time that it was put together,
sure.
I put it in that way. So if you're ready, we could move on to the rest of the funding for the turf field. I don't, maybe if you just give me a couple of minutes, and then I'll have either Jack, do you want to start, or you want me to? Okay.
The tag team.
So,
Let me just introduce you to it. Thanks a lot for the opportunity. Been able to work with Peter McAuliffe. For those of you that don't know him, he's the athletic director at the school, and no one has worked harder on this, and perhaps because no one needs it more. But together we've worked on this on a regular basis, and for tonight's presentation at least, I'd like to turn it over to Peter because he has a very clearly defined rate schedule, if you will, or a financial model that was built off of the town manager's model. So why don't you let him and the town manager go through this, and then if you have some questions at the end, perhaps they could answer those together. Okay?
Thanks, Jack. Good evening, thank you. A little clarification, this is replacement of the artificial turf field and resurfacing of the all-weather track, as they were both installed at the same time 11 years ago. They're both at the same point where it is absolutely vital that we take this step now, or we face some pretty serious problems next fall and next spring with our athletic programs that will be far more expensive in the near future than they are right now. I have commitments looking at this, having gone back a while and looking for a way for the major users of the facility to pay for the replacement of that facility. The school, through the athletic budget, would add an additional $25,000 to this replacement plan. LISA will add $15,000 to that, and the Bengals $7,500 to bring us to a total of $77,500 a year, with the $30,000 from the cell phone.
Can you repeat those two, because that's different than on the information we have?
Which two?
The LISA and the, we have the 25 from the schools, which is also town money, 30,000 from the cell tower, which is town money, but from other...
$15,000 from the Lunenburg Youth Soccer Association and $7,500 from the Bengals organization annually to achieve the goal of paying for the replacement of the field over its lifetime.
And just to clarify again, it's the field and the track surface.
The field and the track, yes.
And can you talk a little bit about the state of the field and...
Yes, the field has numerous issues that come with the age of the field. There are the fibers that make up the grass for the field have worn away over the last 11 years, and they have reached a point where we are at the bottom of the field. There are numerous seams on the field that have been repaired over the last 11 years that are now, we can no longer repair them. There's nothing left to glue them down to. So it's what happens after 11 years on this field. It served us well for those 11 years. We've played literally thousands of games on them, used them for tens of thousands of practices and everything else over the lifetime of the field. It was a great community effort that went on for about 10 years, I think, before we actually opened it up. It's in dire need of replacement.
Okay, and will it be replaced with the same type of material that currently exists? Will it be replaced with something different? What's the life expectancy of the new material?
The track will be resurfaced with virtually an identical system that's there. And the track actually becomes better because it will be thicker than it was in the past. The artificial turf field has gone several generations beyond what we purchased in 2005. The advertised life expectancy would be the same as the current, although I expect that we will get several years longer out of it from what I have seen on it. It's a completely different system. They refer to it as a slit, a dual fiber system. One fiber is slit and that will fall over from use, much like our current field, where the fibers will lay down and keep the infill in place. The other one is a monofilament, and it stands up and gives you that appearance of grass and allows for better play for sports like soccer and things like that. The infill is a different infill. It is what's called EDPM rubber as opposed to crumb rubber, which has been controversial over the last several years. I expect because the field installation now is in a completed facility, it will last longer just because it's better protected. The first few years that the turf field was in existence in the track, the facility had not been completed, as you might remember. There was no fence around the field. The area around it was bare ground, and there was a lot of wear and tear on the field just from people passing back and forth from a lot of different places in there. There was a lot of access to it completely. The field, a few years later, was fenced in, which gave us much better control over the field, as well as reduced the dirt and other debris that was carried into the facility as we were trying to complete it.
Okay.
So what's the number of years that would expect the life expectancy of the field?
The warranty on the field is for 8 years, as our previous field was. We got 11 years out of that field, and I wholly expect that we will get more than 11 years out of the next field. This field also becomes a different system. The current field has the artificial surface laid down on top of a stone base. And then the crumb rubber is approximately 2 inches deep on the field when it was installed. The new system, to account for changes in expectations on concussions and sports injuries, this system that we want to put in has a pad underneath the field, which allows us to put in a shorter pile on the surface, which has a less depth of the infill. And the material that we use on the infill, the EDPM rubber, as well as the pad underneath, will survive through a replacement of the field. So the next replacement would be less expensive, as well as a safer product for us to use.
Okay, and the revenue stream that you talked about, the taking the fees that you talked about, the school funding and the pole, is that the projected revenue stream to repair it again in 10 years when it needs, or do you see other revenue sources in addition? Because my concern is when we put the prac in, now we're faced with this very large expense to replace the field. Do you anticipate that this revenue stream is what would be utilized in 10 years when we needed to replace it?
Yes, and I think we will also look at other sources of revenue, which would mean users. And I think we have to balance, as they explained, I think when they were here a few weeks ago, when we were discussing this as part of the school project, there are only two things that affect the life of the field: sunlight and usage. There's not much we can do about the sunlight. The usage of the field is what you balance to keep the life expectancy of the field. That field saw an incredible amount of use. We had very few other options for fields, for practices, phys ed classes and those things. With the new construction in the school, additional fields going in, we'll have other options to not use the field as much for non-sports games and things like that. We can shift gym classes and things like that onto other fields and balance the use as opposed to using the artificial surface as much.
I'm confused about your question. Isn't the revenue they're talking about now going to pay for the field they're going to put in now?
Yes, but my question is an ongoing revenue stream that would be dedicated to, because in 10 years, we're going to be facing this expense again.
Exactly.
So that's my concern, is when we talk about the $7,500 for the Bengals and $15,000 for LISA, is that expected that this model would continue moving forward? Because in 10 years, we're going to have to pay for this again.
Well, yeah. We're going to be paying for this one for 12 years. So if we have to start paying in 10, we're going to be double paying.
I'm saying 10, but the hope is, as Mr. McAuliffe just talked about, that the life expectancy of the current field was 8 years. We've obtained 11. The life expectancy of this field is 8. I would assume, especially with given less usage and a better product, because things have come a long way since 2005, yep. I think that we can assume that we're going to get, our hope would be we would get 11 to 12 years out of the field and then continue this same model moving forward when we need to replace it.
This is similar to what we did in the previous project. The groups involved, LISA and the school, contributed the money on an annual basis to pay for the lease purchase of the field.
Okay.
And then that was paid off 2 or 3 years ago. We continued to put that money in with the idea that we would be replacing the track first. And that's fortunate that we
Okay,
have.
so is there a current fund available? If you're putting that money in, if the Bengals and LISA have been paying that $7,500 and $15,000,
No, they have not.
They have not.
That ended with the LISA was paying $10,000 a year.
Okay.
Those payments ended with the payment of the field.
Okay, so they're not continuing to put it in?
Right. This is a new step in with the purchase of the field.
Okay, and you have those agreements in place with the Bengals and LISA?
Yes.
Okay. The other question that I have, is there any other user revenue streams that you anticipate that could go towards this? Are there other users of the field other than those entities that utilize it that would also be paying additional fees?
Those are the ones that we needed to get to the point where we could pay for the field. Any other users would have to look at to balance that use, wear and tear, lifespan versus the income on that. But there are other groups that have contacted us over the years that are interested in
Okay, so
using
you'd
the
look at implementing a fee for those types of
Yes.
groups? Okay.
Do you have a plan in place so that you said you had the people stop paying when it was paid off. Do you have a better plan in place now?
Well, I was one of the groups paying. I was not in charge of and this was one of the things that they had been working on for a few years and I think a request came from the Board of Selectmen, among others, was to develop a rate structure, fee structure for use of facilities, and that has been ongoing, and we got involved with that as part of this project, and I would say that those fees will continue on, and if the field lives past its life expectancy, that those fees would continue on to be placed in reserve to pay for the next field that comes up.
Would make sense.
I mean, it's about as good a prospect or project that I can come up with to pay for the field without going out and asking for additional increase in taxes or budgets or things like that.
So as Mr. McAuliffe said, the previous fees were tied to the lease payments on the existing field. These new fees are annual payments that will go forward regardless. Even though they'll be earmarked for payment of the field, they're not going to stop just because we've paid off the field.
I've got some safety issues. When I was at the school building committee meetings, there were many safety concerns expressed about the use of crumb rubber. I have something from the EPA. The existing studies do not comprehensively evaluate the concerns about health risks from the exposure to tire crumb. When they looked at artificial turf fields, they were looking at the blades of grass, and they were talking about playground balls and ball fields, and they did not determine the potential health risks of recycled tire crumb in playgrounds or in synthetic turf athletic fields. There have been lots of reports of soccer goalies getting cancer of the eye. I mean, there are many safety concerns. Why would we not go back to grass?
Well, one, we're not using crumb rubber, we're removing that crumb rubber, and we're putting the crumb rubber that referred to in the industry is a crumb rubber from recycled automobile tires. The rubber infill that we're proposing to use on this is called, make sure I get it in the right order, EPDM rubber, which is not a automobile tire product. It comes from mostly is called, I believe, Nike regrind. It comes from the sole of shoes. It does not have the chemicals that are associated with the crumb rubber. And it was developed a few years ago as an alternative to the crumb rubber from recycled automobile tires.
And have the potential health risks of that been examined?
That has been offered as a replacement to it. The only issues that have come up with the turf fields have been based around the crumb rubber from the recycled tires, although there have been no studies at all that have linked it. There have been reports that I believe started in Seattle, Washington, from a college soccer coach based on her observations. Since then, several states have studied crumb rubber and determined no risk, but I believe that the federal government is in a study right now that will be either the end of this year or the following year to determine if there is any link between the crumb rubber and health risks.
And what about the rubber that you're using?
There have been no reports on that.
Have you looked into it?
I have and discussed it with the groups that have, at my recent athletic directors conference, it was a hot topic, and there's nothing out there on that material as far as being a health risk.
I also read that in the summer, artificial turf fields are so hot they have to be wet down to be used.
We've used our field in every month of the year, and we have never had to wet the field down. It is warmer, but not at the point where we have applied water to the field.
Okay.
And we have 11 summers of experience with it. It is warmer. We take extra precautions when we're using the artificial turf field with our athletes, with more hydration and that, but we haven't had, in the school, not a single incident of overheating or anything like that from our students on the field.
Now, when we were at those school building committee meetings, some people got up and expressed that in order to use those fields safely, the rubber needs to be replaced like every 3 years, because otherwise it isn't firm enough and it can lead to concussions. Or is that in the maintenance plan?
In this field, there will be two, once prior to the fall season, once prior to the spring season, where the company comes out and they will clean. So they'll go through with a machine to remove the pellets. They, along with any other materials that may end up in there, from bobby pins to other items, and then they basically spread the pellets back out evenly over the field as it was initially installed to maintain that protection. But by putting the pad underneath the field, as opposed to relying just on the depth of the crumb rubber for the concussion protection, we get an added safety.
So is that an added cost?
It is. It was approximately $150,000 more expensive than replacing it with a crumb rubber field.
No, I mean the maintenance, this every year.
The maintenance is $1,500.
$1,500 a year or
per year.
A time?
Yep, per year, and they there'll be a couple of times where they initially come to show us it, and that fee won't jump in right away.
And where does that maintenance fee money come from?
That will come from my budget.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chair, through to the town manager, your original proposal was looking to financing over 12 years based on the income that was less than what was described tonight. It'd be my recommendation that we come up with a funding scheme to match the revenue as closely as possible to shorten the term of the borrowing so that it more closely matches the warranty and then the ability to build up funds for the future. Whether we need to have a revolving fund or whether we consider it a stabilization fund or something like that for the money, I don't know, but that would be my recommendation.
And I would agree.
Yeah. I think that's a good recommendation, and as with any borrowing article, the terms of the borrowing are agreed to by the Board of Selectmen and with the town treasurer at the time that we do the borrowing.
I saw the increased projections as good news, and we would either negotiate a shorter period of time, a better rate, or establish a contingent, not a contingency, a kind of an enterprise fund type balance.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Watson?
I want to take the opportunity, first of all, to thank the town manager, the superintendent, the athletic director, the Parks Commission. I mean, this took a lot of moving parts, LISA, the Bengals, in everybody, first of all, determining and realizing, what a wonderful property we had from all the people who volunteered in making that field to begin with. Okay, there was a lot of volunteers. Half of the cost of doing it was donated, the time and anything, and then a lot of materials were donated, and the town picked up the last piece to put it over so we could have it, and it has been incredibly used for 11 straight years. So I'm glad that we finally came to the point. I wish it had been earlier, but I'm not going to, take a lot of energy with that. We finally got to the point where it looks like we can get it to a point where it's self-sustaining with Mr. Ebersol's idea of a stabilization fund where we put that money away, knowing that in 11, 12 years, we're going to be here again. But it needs to be addressed. I couldn't support this more. I think a lot of people put a lot of energies in to do this and come up with, I think, a very, very feasible plan. And I want to acknowledge everybody who did that, for the people going forward who will be using it, and for all the people who made that field happen to begin with, because I think they've rightfully taken themselves out of the picture, but, they did an incredible job getting that, because it took a decade almost to get that field done. So I'm glad to see the town take this step and really adopt the field as their own. We need that kind of field. I think it should be an artificial field because of the use it gets. I don't think you could do this on a turf field, a regular turf field, and I applaud everybody who worked on it, so thank you.
I'd just like to add, as a member of the Capital Planning Committee, this kind of got on our radar about a year and a half ago as a huge expense without a solution, and I would echo Mr. Alonso's compliments to the group of people that came up with a solution that we had no idea how we were going to address, and I think it's a good solution, and I also support it wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
And I would normally make a motion to recommend approval for the two articles, but I think we still have some wordsmithing to do for the meeting, but I certainly support both articles as well.
Okay, so you want to hold off on that, and we'll do it at town meeting?
Is that okay with you, Carrie?
Well, what type of wordsmithing are you
whether it's the
suggesting?
Park Commission versus the Board of Selectmen, and then as far as the borrowing, that the Article 28 would be that we will actually vote to borrow the money, because that'll require a 2/3 vote.
That doesn't require any wording changes to the article, I don't believe.
Other than the motion will be for borrowing.
Right, the motion will be
Yes.
read.
Borrowing,
So given the fact that I think we're only changing removing the Parks Commission to Board of Selectmen, I would make a motion to recommend approval with those changes.
Second that.
Yep.
Any further discussion?
So
That's
which one are we
Both
voting on now?
I would make a motion to approve both Article 27 and 28 with the change that in Article 27, we will be authorizing the Board of Selectmen versus the Parks Commission. And I think Tom seconded that. You're going to call for a vote?
Or do you want to have two separate votes, or?
No, I think we can handle it with one, and it was seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, one. All righty. And we have two more that also involve the school.
So we also have Articles 30 and 31. Both of these are requests from the school committee to authorize the transfer of two school properties to the Board of Selectmen. The first is to transfer the Brooks House, and that would be for the purpose of disposition, and the second is to transfer T.C. Passios, and that would be for the purpose of retaining that building. In your packet this evening, I've included some information before you. I'll take up the Brooks House first. The Brooks House, as you know, is a property that is currently used by the school, the Lunenburg Public Schools, to house one office, and that's the Facilities Director's office. It is also rented to, a portion of it is rented to the Lunenburg Ledger. And the rental fee that the Lunenburg Ledger pays on an annual basis roughly covers the costs of operating that building. So I would propose going forward, as we're in this transition period, as we hope to get the market analysis authorized and try to determine the best use for the Brooks House among other buildings, that we would just continue that same arrangement where we would maintain the Facilities Director office in the building so that we have a staff member present in the building, but that we continue to rent it for the same amount to the Ledger to cover the cost of that building. In terms of the patios, this is a little more complicated. In your packet, there is a floor plan of the existing building, and I've identified the current uses of each of the spaces in the building. As you can see, and as you are aware, in the back of the building, that wing is essentially rented by FLAC, which is a special education collaborative. They've been in that space for a couple of years now. They would like to continue in that space at least for an additional year. And they are willing to increase their rental fee that they pay to the town to fully cover the costs of their use of the building. Most of the rest of the building is occupied by Lunenburg Public Schools offices, administrative offices, extended day special education, the Achieve program, and then there is one classroom that is currently occupied by PAC, and I've proposed in this layout offering PAC an additional classroom. They are interested in some additional space. I have asked them if they would be interested in renting that for the same fee that they're renting the existing classroom. I think they discussed that at their meeting last night. I didn't hear back whether or not they made a decision, but their involvement in this is not critical to, it won't make or break the financing arrangement here. On the page prior to the layout is the proposed budget or costs of operating Passios in fiscal 17. The utilities costs are just under $50,000. Building maintenance costs are about $6,100. Maintenance supplies are about $8,500. And labor is just under $70,000. Right now, we have a full-time custodian that is assigned to that building. Going forward, we either would continue with having a full-time custodian, or we would make some other arrangement, but the costs would be about the same. So we're trying to figure out this is a school employee who really is needed to work in the new building. So we're trying to figure out, and we need a little flexibility going forward about whether or not we continue to have a full-time town employee / school employee, whether we have a combination of a contract service and ask FLAC to provide their own custodian, which they are also open to. So we're still working on what the best option is there. But the total costs for operating this building are projected at $134,328. FLAC has agreed to an annual rental of $95,000 for the same space. And if they, again, we would have to, if they need to provide their own custodian, we would have to make some adjustments. But we're also looking at charging rents to 3 other entities. Lunenburg Public Schools for their use, $15,000 a year. The Extended Day Program, which operates out of this building, $20,000 per year. Pack rental I've included at $10,000 per year. They currently pay $6,000, so if they rented that additional space, that rent would go up. That would leave us with a reserve of just under $6,000 if we had any unanticipated expenses. There's also one item, a reinspection, that is noted in the costs at, in the expenses at $2,750. That's something that's done once every 3 years, and it was done in this current year, so that we will not need to do that in fiscal 17. So if you add that to the $5,700, we've got something less than just under $10,000 to address any unanticipated costs. This is a 63-year-old building. We don't know what's going to happen. We certainly, if the roof falls in, no, we don't have that covered, but we do expect that we have general maintenance items covered, and this is a plan for a year while we decide what we're going to do with this building long-term. I think there is a potential to carry out this plan or a similar plan for another year after that, but this is not a long-term scenario. This is a 1 to 2 year scenario while we get our ducks in a row and figure out if we are going to, in fact, move forward with having municipal offices there and renovate this space.
It seems like it's in very good shape for such an old building.
I think it's been very well maintained, as all the school buildings have been, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
And ultimately, the plan is to move the municipal offices
Yeah,
into
right.
a renovated version of it.
So one thing I didn't mention is, this would be a new building for our facilities department. The intent here is that the building would be turned over to the Board of Selectmen, but that the school, through the school facilities director, would still be overseeing this building, at least for the next year, because he's familiar with the building. He knows how everything works. He has agreed to do that. He's not going to do that long-term, but it makes more sense to have him oversee it rather than to have our staff learn about this building and trying to manage it for the next year.
I have a couple of questions. In the demolition of the current high school, the heat comes from the Passio School. Is the demolition included all the way to the underground lines for the steam line to the Passio School? And is there any reduction of, I'm assuming they're not touching the Passio School?
So under the high school program, they will make all the disconnects at the Passios that need to be made for steam lines, electrical lines, and data lines that are connecting the two buildings together. And the two buildings have, high school and the Passios, have shared the same heating system and electrical system, so utility costs are an estimate at best.
Great.
So how are we heating it then?
So the heating plant is at the Passios, and so
okay.
It'll just stay there.
All right.
And then my other question to Carrie, there's a parcel plan. Is that the plan that we will be accepting for land?
So thank you for mentioning that, because I completely overlooked that. When I was working with town council on putting the article together, she said one of the requirements was that we had a general delineation of the property that would go with this building. So we did put the attached map together, and it is generally what we would expect to go with this building. It doesn't mean that it can't change. We're not passing any deeds back and forth, so we're not tying this down, but just to give people a general idea. So we would be looking at Lot A for the Passios building would be approximately 4.1 acres. Lot B for the Brooks House would be approximately 1.1 acres. Again, not tied in stone, but just to give people a general idea of the property that would go with each of these buildings.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to recommend approval of Article 30 and 31.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All righty.
One large step.
All right, so now we have a couple that are, I guess, the town managers.
Yep.
If you'd walk us through them, I don't think they're as contentious. I would hope.
Sure. If they are, we're in trouble. Especially with the first one, Article 8, prior year bills. We have none to present to town meeting. Hopefully that one's not controversial. Article 9 is the fiscal 2016 budget adjustment article. And in your packet, there's some information for you to review. You may recall from prior town meetings that we typically, our budget adjustment article is a lot more complicated than the one before you this evening. And that generally is because we're trying to account for a snow and ice deficit without carrying anything forward. Right. Since we didn't have that this year, we're in a much better position. So there are two different spreadsheets in the packet. The first is the line item budget as it's approved by town meeting, and I worked with the town accountant. We went through and tried to identify where we thought we would have shortfalls and where we thought we would have overages. I do expect that when we close the year out, we're probably going to be in better standing than I'm showing here on the spreadsheets. We have to work really hard to identify the potential deficits. The surpluses, we don't have to work harder than covering what the deficits are. So the second spreadsheet shows you the proposed changes or adjustments to the fiscal 16 budget. I'll talk first about the deficits. We do expect a pretty large deficit in legal expense. I'm sure that comes as no surprise. I expect that we will be over budget by $60,000. And this is due primarily to our two big lawsuits, Hollis Hills and O'Brien Homes. For the O'Brien Homes case, in fiscal 16 alone, we've spent $73,000 of a $111,000 budget. So that's where most of our deficit is coming from. So again, $60,000 over there. The second item is the wiring inspector. This comes up every year. Our inspectors, plumbing, electric, and wiring, receive a percentage. Their payment is a percentage of the fees, the permit fees that come in. So at the beginning of the year, we make an estimate of what we expect to bring in for revenue, and for whatever reason, the electrical permits are always higher than we expect. So this is a deficit in the appropriation, but we have revenue that offsets it, so we have to make the adjustment. And so we need a $10,000 adjustment there to account for permit revenue that has come in that needs to be paid out to that inspector. And then the last adjustment is to the salary reserve account. I'm looking to add $15,000 to that account, and that would help fund the settlement for the fire contract, which we have 2 years that we have to pay in fiscal 16. We have to pay 15 and 16. And we have the settlement of the police chief's contract that we need to account for there as well. So we need $85,000 in total for Article 9. And I added in Article 10, the $10,000 for the market analysis.
Bless you.
which we would like to pay out of fiscal 16 since we have the flexibility. So we're looking to make $95,000 worth of adjustments in total, and they would come from two sources. The first is the reserve fund. The Finance Committee Reserve Fund has about $87,000 in it. There have been no requests for consideration for a reserve fund transfer, so we would be looking to pull the majority of that out, $85,000, to help fund these deficits. And then the second would be unemployment expense. $10,000 is the full amount of the budget. We have had a few claims made in the current fiscal year, but the town has been successful on all of those claims, so we have not paid anything out, and we don't anticipate to pay anything out. So we would be looking to take that money and reappropriate it to cover some of these deficits as well.
I would make a motion to recommend approval of Article 9.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alrighty.
So still no contract settlements on Article 12, the DPW collective bargaining agreement, and Article 13, IPBO, or the police officers collective bargaining agreement. And I believe the last article you have left is Article 18, the fiscal 17 solid waste enterprise fund budget. Now, I kept this one aside because, as you will recall, we had a bit of a contract dispute with Casella over their interest in increasing a fee that was set forth in the contract. I didn't believe that they had the ability to increase that fee mid-contract. We had to get town council involved. Town council sent a letter. Casella in January and February billed us for the increased fee, but we didn't pay it. And then in actually January, February, March, in April, they did not bill us, and they backed out. So I think that was their response. While they didn't officially respond to the letter, they reversed the charges. And so that, I believe that dispute is resolved, and we can move forward with setting the budget. I was just concerned if there was a legal basis for that increase, we'd have to talk about increasing bag fees. So we don't have to. The current year budget is $265,000. It's been that for several years. I'd like to bump that up to $275,000 in case there's increased participation, not because I expect additional costs, but if there's increased participation in the program, since we haven't bumped it up in a few years. So we're looking for approval of a fiscal 17 budget of $275,000 for the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, and this is fully funded through the pay per throw bag program.
I think that program works really well.
I would make a motion that we recommend approval of Article 18 at $275,000.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alrighty. So we do still have, although we've already discussed Article 26, we did say that we were going to address a recommendation for the funding of the pavement management. Is that correct?
It is. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure, we've talked about including the roads that were in the recent
Right.
betterment district, so I just want to make mention of that. So the last time we talked about this, you had a request from a resident who lives on Rennie Street for consideration for Pratt Street, Rennie Street, Cross Road, Pine Grove Road, Lakeview Ave, and Pleasant View Ave, for those roads that are part of the most recent betterment district, that funding for repavement of those roads come from this plan rather than the betterment, because if it was included in the betterment, then the residents who are receiving a betterment pay for it that way, and then if this article is approved and the ballot question is approved, then they also pay for it through the debt exclusion, and that didn't seem fair. So we went back and we took a look at this, and what we found a bunch of different things. What we found was that Pine Grove Road, Lakeview Ave, and Pleasant View Ave, the costs of improving those roads was already contained in the pavement management plan. Pratt Street, Rennie Street, and Cross Road in the pavement management plan that was updated last fall, we assumed that repavement of those roads would be paid through the betterment. And I think probably because when the plan was put together, we knew we were going to do the betterment district for Pratt, Rennie, and Cross. And I know at least Pleasant View was something that came after.
And at that time, we weren't talking about a debt exclusion either.
Yeah. So the cost of Pine Grove, Lakeview, and Pleasant View is already included in that $3.9 million worth of work that we've to call it, we made it an even $4 million. So that was already included, so we didn't have to add those. What we did need to figure out was Pratt, Rennie, and Cross. So 2 issues here. Rennie and Cross are local, classified as local roads. Pratt is classified as a collector. The plan that is being presented under this article is for local roads, so it's not fair to include Pratt in here. So Pratt needs to be paid for separately. Rennie and Cross can be included within the $4 million authorization because we had some flexibility. We had allocated $3,910,000, so we have $90,000 that we can use to pay for Rennie and Cross, and we would propose that we pay for Pratt Street out of our either Chapter 90 or the existing budgetary authorization. Now that does mean that Pratt potentially gets bumped up to the top, bumped up higher, but there isn't, we're not seeing any other way to do that. So that's what we would propose. So in this article, Article 26, we've included funding for resurfacing / maintenance of all local roads, including Rennie Street, Cross Road, Pine Grove Road, Lakeview Avenue, Pleasant View Avenue, and we will pay the cost of Pratt Street either through Chapter 90 or the existing fiscal 17 authorization. So we've taken care of.
Take care of that.
We've taken care of that.
And I think that we should commend a creative solution to a dilemma we had.
I agree.
But that's assuming that the article passes and the ballot question passes, right? Okay.
So then the second thing that you wanted to look at is how we would propose to fund this $4 million through a debt exclusion, what the terms of the funding would be. I'm not proposing anything new this evening. We have the same 5 scenarios that you looked at that would finance this over a period of, 7 to, I believe, 12 years. We were looking at a bunch of different scenarios. The impact would be on an annual basis from a low of about, over the term, $958 to about $1,100 over the term, whether you finance it over 7 to 12. The annual impact for a home with average assessed valuation would be anywhere from, $2.57 to, I think the high is probably $139. Some of these scenarios sort of smooth out the payments. Some of them try to match a little bit with existing debt service. But you had talked about wanting to let voters know ahead of when they need to vote at town meeting and at the ballot what your preferred financing would be.
have a question. You know, in scenario 2.1, it seems the least objectionable to me, but I don't know why it's really low in the first 2 years, then it jumps up. Can't it stay lower up until you get to like 24? I mean, it feels like you're really adding to the debt for a couple of years when you could keep it even. I hate to add more debt, and you could even it out more later.
Well, we did provide a number of scenarios where we smoothed the payments, we evened it out to the best of our ability. We do have legal requirements that we have to meet, and we have to pay a certain amount off at certain times. So there really isn't any way to really minimize the impact up to 2024. I know, I certainly would like to do that. I understand that's when we see a drop-off in debt service,
Right.
and if there was a way to do it, I would have presented that, but there isn't a way to do that and be in compliance with the regulations that govern borrowing.
So those initial years are the bond anticipation notes, we're basically only paying interest?
Yes.
And so you can't keep doing that for 5 years. You can only do that during the initial phase. There's a limit to what you can do on that. And actually, scenarios 1.1 and 2.1 are 17 years worth of...
Oh, right, because we've done the temporary, we've extended the
Right,
temporary
right.
financing as long as
As
we
long as you
can.
could. So
Yeah.
the question I have is, what is the life expectancy of the roads? Are we looking at a 20-year road?
15 to 20 years.
So, yeah, so
Okay.
this assumes repavement, crack sealing, which we would do to extend the life of the road somewhere between 10 and 15 years. That would come out of the budget.
Okay.
And we would be looking to do that. We're not going to pave these roads and then not do anything for it until the debt service is paid
Right,
off.
right.
If we need to do further maintenance, we will.
And just to remind myself, I guess, if this plan, and I think the beauty of the plan is, gets us to a 1.2 mil, we're not talking about doing this again at any point.
Right, because
Because-
the plan is the revenue associated with it will continue.
Right.
I mean, our regular funds will now be able to maintain, and we'll be able to continue that 70 PSI.
Right. So that, other than for financial reasons, the life expectancy of the road is kind of immaterial, because
Right.
we're going to maintain it.
We're going to have that
on an
maintenance, we're going to put in
ongoing
place
basis,
a maintenance program.
So even though it's not much difference for actually what a homeowner would pay, scenario 1.1 is as even as you possibly can get, with $45 in the first year, then $74 for the average person a year, and then going up to 85. So we're talking less than $10 a month for that time period, although it does go over 17 years.
I would say that scenario 1.1 and 1.2 make the most sense to me for varying reasons.
I would tend to agree. I personally was leaning towards 1.2, because the unknown factor says I'd really like to have it done with,
Get it over
in
with.
case something else comes
Yep.
along that we need to deal with.
Yep.
And I'm not sure there's that much of a
Yep.
difference between 75 or 85 and
Well,
130.
it's different for 5 years. The 5 middle years are
Right.
where there's a difference between 1.1 and 1.2. The other ones are
And
kind of
that's when
negative.
isn't that when the bulk of the school borrowing comes in? Doesn't that hit the heaviest then?
No, it'll already in
Oh, it
place.
is. Yeah, it's already, the bulk of the school borrowing is already on the bills. We've borrowed just under $34 million, and that impact is on the fiscal 16 tax bills. Or most of it, a little more coming on in fiscal 17.
I just hate to increase the debt that much. It seems like crazy.
Personally, I like scenario 1.1, because I think it's a lesser impact to the taxpayer, and I think that given the life of the roads and the maintenance plan, I don't think a 15-year term is unreasonable.
And we do have the ability to refinance if we get favorable rates in the
Exactly.
future.
Exactly.
I make a motion, we go with scenario 1.1.
Second.
Any further discussion? I just would like it to be over with, but I could live with 1.1. No further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, so this is what we are going to share. We're not committed to it, but we are committed to it.
We are
We're not
committed to
legally
it.
committed to it, but we're going to say.
But we're
right.
more, I think we're ethically committed to it.
I
If This
agree.
is
I
what we
agree
present
totally.
at town meeting, and that this is the impact, that the taxpayers are making this decision based on the information we present.
Right.
The other thing that
So we're
have,
locked into scenario 1.1.
right. The other question I have we already put the pavement management plan on the town website with a listing of the roads?
I'd have to double check. I think we have, but I'm not 100% sure.
I would like to have that, make sure that that's there, maybe moved up to the top again.
Yeah.
And then have that listing available at town meeting. I know that it's not a guarantee, it's a plan, but I do want people to see what roads we're planning to move down when we go through this process,
Yeah.
because people need to know that.
Mhm.
I think they'd be really interested in that.
Yeah, although it's not, I mean, that plan is do need, if we're going to say we're going to do everything, then the whole schedule of everything is going to change because of
Right.
moving equipment
Right,
around.
it's,
and ease,
right,
so-
exactly.
But it's good, I have no problem, it's a public, should be a public document, people should be able to see it.
Well, and the other thing at the Water District meeting that I was at the other night, I reiterated with them that we intend to cooperate and coordinate with the Water District if they have a water main replacing program with their capital needs, as well as our own stormwater drainage needs, so we aren't paving a road that we're going to dig up
Right,
within a
right.
short period of time.
Right, that's a critical component. We don't want to be digging it up after we just paved it.
So I just want to be clear, the pavement management plan that we have, and I know you all know this, all of the roads are ranked in a priority order. We have not created a second plan. We're looking to do this work over a period of 3 to 4 years. We haven't created a second plan for local roads that says we're going to do these roads in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. And we haven't done that because we need to coordinate with the water district.
And you don't know
No,
what
we-
stormwater issues you're going to run out. against.
Right, and it's more likely that even though roads in the same neighborhood could be ranked very differently, that we're going to do
Right.
all of the
One
roads
section
in
of
one
town, right,
neighborhood. So
right.
if it's not on the website, we certainly make it available. It's on file in the clerk's office. But I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that they can look at this plan and look their road up and know in 2018 my road's going to get done, because we just don't have that level of detail yet.
And, for purposes of efficiency, you're going to be changing the plan.
Right.
Exactly.
But
at
I'd
the-
also ask that if we pass this and it passes at the ballot, that, because obviously if anybody's driven on it, Route 2A definitely needs work, and we hopefully will coordinate when the state is planning on repaving that, because in many areas that is
In
really bad.
many areas.
Especially the manhole covers, if you're going eastbound on 2A from Route 13 to
That's how you get your
Lancaster.
exercise.
I would suggest that if this passes all the things, I think we would want to have a detailed conversation about the plan.
Yep.
Not so much as to direct it, but to communicate it, both to ourselves and to the town.
That-
And it would be good to talk to the state.
Right.
Okay, I believe we've covered all of the ATM issues.
Could I mention one thing before
Sure.
we move? So this evening, I handed out a draft of the motion sheet. This will be reviewed, there's a meeting tomorrow with town council and the moderator, town clerk, town accountant, and myself to review all of these to make sure that they are accurate. I've done the assigning just the same way we've always done it, round robin, and just by the luck of the draw, all of the votes were unanimous except 2.
That I have assigned. So I could reassign that one.
I'm happy to reassign, but I just wanted to continue with that round robin.
That's
That's just,
It happened for both of the
It's-
4
I don't
one
have-
votes.
I don't have any
Yes.
problem taking the last one,
That's-
so.
that's-
but yeah, it was just funny how that worked.
Yeah, I looked at it, well,
So I will reassign those if,
thank you.
that's
you can
good.
at least read a motion on something you support.
That would be good.
I thought it was entertaining. The only item on current business that we didn't get to as we shuffled was the town manager reports and department reports. Is there anything else that you want to update us on?
The only thing I wanted to mention is this is our town report.
Ah.
And it is on the website. I don't know if the camera can see it. We do expect to have copies available for town meeting for the first time in probably
Wow,
5 years. So
great.
I'm very
Great.
excited about that.
That's great.
Super.
I can't thank Elaine Peterson enough for spearheading this and putting it together. We just have not been able to have it in time for town meeting for a long time, and we do now. But she wanted me to mention if anybody would like to do some advanced reading, it's on the website.
Great. The last agenda item is to accept the resignation that I'd like to read from Don Bowen from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Dear board members, it is with deep regret that I tender my resignation as of April 26th, 2016. During my 30-odd years working with the board, I have found it both educational and rewarding, but most of all, I've enjoyed working with a great group of people. In closing, I have enjoyed the friendships on the zoning board and want to thank Lisa for being a great and loyal administrative assistant. Warm regards, Donald F. Bowen. And I'd just like to acknowledge that's an awful long time to be in service to the town, and we do appreciate Don's contribution.
And I'd like to echo that with the fact that Don was a wealth of information that he was able to share, and on the Zoning Board of Appeals, he always made sure that he had visited the site, had talked to the proponents and the opponents, and whether you agreed with him or not, he was a well-informed Zoning Board of Appeal member, which is a good job requirement for that position.
Yeah, I would just like to add, when I worked for the Board of Health, I got the opportunity to know Don really well because Lisa and I shared an office for many years, so I got to know Don very, very well. And his commitment and dedication to being a ZBA member was very apparent. He went tirelessly through the files, made sure he understood exactly what the issues were, visited the site, and his dedication to the town of Lunenburg. So for the past 30 years, he was a wonderful contributor to the town, and I wish him well moving forward.
And I would just add, I agree with all the sentiments of my colleagues and just say that, first of all, 30 years is a long time, as you said, Mr. Chair. And all the times and issues that I worked with Don and the ZBA, there was never any doubt how passionate he was about, A, knowing the rules of the ZBA and how passionate he was about serving Lunenburg. And those are incredibly great qualities. As we face vacancies in other places, we need poor people like him to come forward and really give. I don't even ask 30 years, just come in and 5 years at a time would be great. Because
Or
we
one or
really
two.
need that.
Or
Yeah.
one or two.
Okay.
We'll take anything.
But I mean, 30 years, he comes from a breed, as other people did before him. I mean, that we've seen. I mean, Mr. Rogers resigned, didn't run for the Water District Commissioners, and he served on the Board of Selectmen and other capacities. Marion Benson served for many years. I mean, people served a long amount of years back then, and it would be nice to see that come by because regardless, as Mrs. Burcham said, whether you agreed or not with them, when they fought their issues, they fought very passionately, and they had a lot of information at their fingertips, and that's really to be applauded, and that kind of service is excellent.
And that's what makes our town work. I mean, we are a town meeting form of government, and it's critical that we have these volunteers come forward and dedicate their time to the town. Otherwise, the system doesn't work. So I really, really hope that people will start volunteering.
And thank you, Don.
Okay, great. Can I have a motion to accept the resignation?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our next meeting is May the 10th. but I hope to see everybody on Saturday at the annual town meeting at 9 a.m. at the high school.
Well, we are posted for that, right? So we actually do have an official meeting beforehand, is that
I
true?
wanted to confirm that with you.
Okay.
We have not posted yet, so.
Do we have anything that we need to take up before town meeting?
No, I think everything left are things you wanted to wait and hear discussion at town meeting.
So we don't need
So we
to
don't need-
meet
okay.
prior to town meeting?
No, and I believe the rules say that during town meeting, we are in fact
Right,
in
right, we don't have to
session,
post
right.
for that, right.
Right. All right, but anyway, the annual town meeting for everyone else is 9 o'clock Saturday at the high school, and we will meet again here on May 10th. Is there any final public comment from the public? Any final public comment from the board? Can I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. See you Saturday.
So if we're by quarter, by quarter of it.
Yeah, yeah. Which is wonderful.
You
I
have
think
it
that's a first.
electronically?
I can't remember the last time.
I can scan.